Hello and welcome to episode 98 of the Wisdom from the Akasha podcast. My name is Susie, I am your host, and I'm an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. Just a quick reminder that the Next Level 1 class starts on the 27th of January. I know that sounds like a very long way away, but I also know that over the holiday season, time gets very strange. So if you do want to get signed up for the Next Level 1 class, you can do so via the website. I'll pop a link into the show notes, and I look forward to seeing lots of you there in January. Today, I want to offer a self-reflection practice, and it's based on this question: is your spiritual practice based in self-love or self-loathing? And this might sound like a little bit of a harsh question. Certainly self-loathing sounds like a very harsh question, but I think it's something that's very important to ponder on your spiritual journey for a number of reasons, and I want to go into that in a little bit of depth today. This is not for you to berate yourself, be critical to yourself, or anything like that. It's just so that you can maybe think about the energy and the intention behind your spiritual practice and how sometimes tweaking that can actually be really helpful and really expansive on your spiritual journey. The first thing we need to do is we need to understand that there is a difference between self-help and spiritual development. Okay? I know there's often a crossover between the two, but we also need to acknowledge that the two are very different in respect of the aims behind them. So self-development and self-help, the aim behind that is usually to achieve some external goal. So to perhaps make yourself more attractive to a romantic partner, or to make yourself more productive in respect of running your own business. There's lots of intentions behind it, but it is this strengthening and this development of the self, the individualized self. Sometimes you'll see within spiritual teachings a complete rejection of self-help or self-development because of the focus on the self. Now, spiritual development, on the other hand, is about moving towards this remembrance of yourself as this individualized fractal of source consciousness. It's about moving towards divine union. So the aims are very different, but of course what can happen, there can be crossover between the two, and I want to talk a little bit about that crossover today, my thoughts on self-development and spiritual development and where the crossover is, and also this question of, is your spiritual practice based in self-love or self-loathing? So first of all, why is there a crossover? How does it happen? So whilst spiritual development, spiritual practices is designed to move you towards divine union, this remembrance of your divinity, which is beautiful, oftentimes to be able to start to remember, there are things that need to be let go of first. It can be often very hard to remember your divinity and remember that you are this individualized fractal of source consciousness if you've got a lot of stuff going on. So if you've got a lot of energetic stagnation, if you have certain things going on or stored within the light grid, and I'm going to do a separate episode on the light grid, which is what we call in the Akashic Records your 7 energy bodies. So throughout your various different incarnations, we see from the Akashic Records that you'll pick up energetic stagnation for a whole host of different reasons. And for part of your spiritual path, for most people, you're taking the indirect path. And I'll link an episode that I made on the indirect and direct paths in the show notes, so you can go and listen to that in your own time. But it's often necessary to go through a period of healing, a period of letting go of limiting beliefs, a period of really moving that energetic stagnation through. This is what transmutation or alchemy is about. And oftentimes what's needed when you're doing those practices are what you would traditionally call self-help or self-development. So things like therapy, psychoanalysis, any practices is really going to help you understand yourself, who you are as an individual, and what you need to do to perhaps let go of certain things or heal certain things or strengthen certain things even. So this is why there's a crossover, because it is often necessary to combine the two. Now, as I said earlier, some spiritual teachers are completely against self-help and self-development because they see it as a strengthening of the self. And I understand that perspective, but oftentimes what can happen is if people try to force themselves into direct path practices, so abiding in love, connecting to oneness, transcending the human experience, if they try to rush themselves into that too quickly, what actually happens is spiritual bypassing, okay? Because the true spiritual journey is not about escaping the human experience. The true spiritual journey is about having a human experience from the perspective of your divinity. It's understanding that whilst you are a human, you're going to have an ego, and you're going to have this personality that you've created, and you're going to have these programs and these conditions put upon you. But can you do that and also remember your divinity at the same time? That's the spiritual journey. A lot of the time, when you're on the spiritual journey, you realize just how sucked into the story of the ego you are. You realize that your ego is completely in control of everything that goes on. And what you're doing on your spiritual journey is you're taking that power away from the ego and remembering your divinity. Now, if you are in physical incarnation, you have an ego. Okay, you may have experienced oneness. You may have experienced complete dissolution of the self, complete egoic dissolution. Okay, those experiences are beautiful and amazing, and they help us to remember who we truly are. You know, the question of the spiritualist journey is, who am I? And those experiences help us to remember who we are. However, if you're operating in this physical reality, which I'm assuming you are because you're listening to this podcast episode, you have to pay your gas bill. You have to buy groceries. You have to have a sense of me, mine, I. Okay? That's the game. This is what you come here to do. You come here to be divine and also limited, and to have this physical experience whilst being limited. That's what this human game is about. So a lot of the time what happens is people will have one of these experiences and they'll say, oh, my ego is dead. I no longer have an ego. And actually just what happens is the ego comes back, as always, because you need this idea of being a separate self to function in this reality. And we get into spiritual ego. And again, I've done another episode on that, which I'll link into the show notes if you want to go and have a listen to that one. But what you will see with people who are advanced on the spiritual journey, you want to call them enlightened or illuminated, that's fine, but they have a really good sense of humor and they can really laugh at themselves. There's a lot of humility there. They understand that this whole thing is a big cosmic joke. It doesn't feel like it when it's tough, but actually, yes, we are this individualized fractal of source consciousness experiencing physical reality. And also, we're doing it through this kind of caricature avatar that we have created with all of these limitations and all of these beliefs and everything else. The idea with the spiritual journey is to ensure that the ego is the servant and not the master. And that's where a lot of the work is involved in. It's breaking the ego down to a certain degree so that it is the servant. It's working on behalf of you. So when you do have to go and pay your electricity bill, you're able to do that because you have this sense of self-identity, of this I, me, mine. Now, what has all of this got to do with this question? So in my mentorship work, in my working one-to-one with people, I see a lot of people come to spiritual development and spiritual growth from self-help. And that's a very normal path to take. But what happens is they have been sucked into this narrative by the self-help or the self-development industry that they are broken and that they need fixing. Okay, this, of course, is a very different starting point to the spiritual journey, which is that you are unconditional love. You are this individualized fractal of source consciousness, and you've just forgotten that. Okay, and this journey is about that remembrance. Of course, what can happen if you get too into this self-development, self-improvement model is you're constantly trying to fix yourself. You're constantly trying to improve yourself. And it can become quite toxic and you can get stuck in loops. So I'm not one of those teachers who says, no, self-development is pointless. I actually think it can be really helpful. I know people have really benefited from certain practices, certain teachings within what you would classify as the self-development, self-improvement movement. But it can keep people stuck, and it can keep people stuck in this I'm broken, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. Therefore, I have to keep looking for something outside of myself to fix myself. Okay? So, as always, it's a balance. It's a balance of understanding, okay, this is helpful. I have this issue. Maybe I have problems with boundaries, or maybe I have problems with abandonment issues, and I really want to work on these so that I can move into a healthier relationship pattern. Now, this can be done from a place of self-loathing or a place of self-love. So if it's coming from self-loathing, it's going to be around, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm broken, I need to be fixed. If it's coming from a place of self-love, then it's going to be, I'm such a beautiful person. I really deserve to be in a happy, loving relationship, for example. But because of what I've experienced and what I've been through, I need to maybe look at some of these issues before I'm able to go into and look at a healthier relationship. Can you see how there's a difference in the energetics behind coming in from a self-loathing perspective and coming in from a self-love perspective? So I really wanted to make this episode just to invite you all to feel into this when you're doing your spiritual practices. What's the energy behind it? Are you doing your breath work because maybe you're trying to avoid what you're feeling at the moment? Okay, well, that's bypassing. If it's not bypassing, if it's okay, I want to do this breath work because it's really helping me and I deserve to have this help and this support that this breath work is going to offer, then that's from self-love. If it's, I'm going to do this breath work because no matter what I do, I can't do this, I'm useless, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, then it's coming from self-loathing. So you do have to kind of work it and really kind of feel into and be really honest with yourself about what the intention is behind it and how it's coming through. But it can be really helpful to know so that you can give yourself a lot more kindness, a lot more grace, and a lot more compassion on your spiritual journey and move to a place of, okay, this practice is coming from a loving place. This practice is coming from a place that I'm trying to remember and connect to who I truly am, not the self that I've created to play this game of life on earth, but who I truly am. The spiritual journey is supposed to help you and support you through this life on earth that you have chosen to come here to an experience, not to avoid living or to declare everything as an illusion and not participate in it. So when you have emotions like sadness and anger and fear, allow yourself to feel them. Just don't get stuck in them and don't get stuck in the identity of them. Okay? That's where the spiritual practices are really going to help. So before I finish up, I just want to offer 3 tips for you to help yourself really tune into this energy of what type of energy am I taking into my spiritual practice. So tip number 1 is do one thing today just to remember your divinity. For some of you, that might be going out and looking at a flower and really merging into the flower and its beauty and losing yourself and just remembering that divinity. For other people, it might just be doing something that puts you into that frequency of unconditional love. Okay, this doesn't have to be big practice. It can just be, okay, I need to do one thing today to remember my divinity so I stop being so hard on myself, stop thinking that I need to continually fix myself. The second tip is, of course, just be a lot kinder to yourself on your spiritual journey. If you find yourself getting sucked into the self-loathing narratives, recognize that, accept it, and move on. There's no point in sitting there and going, oh my God, I can't believe I've been stuck in this. Why am I so bad at this, etc., etc. It's just not helpful. People are really hard on themselves. And the last thing is just to really lean into the question, am I doing this because I believe I'm broken and need fixing, or Am I doing this because I love myself so, so much that I don't want to stay stuck? I don't want to stay in this loop, this unhealthy pattern, this program, whatever it is. So I hope this episode you have found it helpful, and I hope that it's given you some pause for thought and that you take this into your spiritual practice. And I, of course, will see you next week for the next episode.